that was kind of like the first real challenge I think I faced at such a young age. When you're neurodivergent, you're so used to masking because you're in an environment that doesn't accept you for yourself.
I never felt able to put my hand up, never felt able to share my opinion, never felt able to contribute because there was this big crowd that just overwhelmed me. Now I have, hello everyone, and welcome to Sphere of Success. The podcast looks at challenge and adversity in business and how we alchemize that into success. And today, this theme is really important, especially what's going on in the world today. The protective factor, how to use adversity to thrive in leadership and inclusion. And today I have the most amazing lady with me, Frances Akinde. She is a neurodivergent educator, speaker and author with over 20 years of experience across primary, secondary, special and local authority education. A qualified SENCO and former head teacher of a secondary special school for learners with autism and associated difficulties. Until recently, Frances worked as a local authority SEND inspector and advisor, alongside running her own consultancy and coaching practice. After discovering her own neurodivergence and hearing impairment in 2022, Frances has combined her lived experience with her professional expertise to advocate for genuine inclusion in education and the workplace. She is an assistive technology trainer, workplace adjustments assessor, and anti-racist schools coach for Leeds Beckett University's CRED Award, as well as co-founder for the BAME Ed Send Hub. Through her consultancy, Frances provides training, coaching, and advisory support on inclusive practice, intersectionality, and leadership. Her first book, Be an Ally, Not a Bystander, published in 2024, empowers educators to take meaningful action towards allyship, and her upcoming title, Intersectionality, Race and Send, Conversations for Advocacy and Change, will be released in 2026. Frances is passionate about helping others build inclusive environments where every learner and educator can thrive and truly belong. Oh, I've been looking forward to this so much, Frances. Welcome to the Sphere of Success podcast.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's really strange hearing my bio read back to me. Reminds me of all the things that I have done.
Well, you're making such a difference in the world, not just in the UK, because I know you're a great advocate and you speak on international stages as well. And congratulations for not just the one book, but for the almost published second book as well, and such a busy life, because I know how difficult that is to weave into what you do. So yeah, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And without further ado, I'd like our listeners, our audience, to actually hear a little bit about what made you, Frances Akinde, get into what you're doing now.
Well, I suppose starting back from why I got into education was because I love art. And art is one of the things that's always got me through life. Just having a creative outlet has been really therapeutic for me. So I did my degree in photo media. And then it was my tutor that said to me, you really should think about being an art teacher because you're really passionate about art. And that's how my career in education started. But I quickly started to build really good relationships with children that displayed behavior difficulties and were finding it hard to access the curriculum. And that moved me into working with children with challenging behaviors, especially in alternative provision. And then that started my career in education. But more towards my advocacy work that I do a lot of now was because some of the experiences that I've had in life where people could have stood up for me and they didn't. And I think there's that fear of what can happen to you if you do stand up for people. And, that fear stops people from stepping out and using their voice. So I decided, I couldn't keep quiet about things that happened and some of the injustices in education. So I decided to be an advocate, and I wrote my book to teach children how to advocate for themselves, how to advocate for each other, and, first of all, teaching educators how to do that so they can create safe environments for their children. So, yeah.
Wow. And yes, it's difficult to stand up for yourself. Sometimes I think it's more difficult to stand up for yourself than it is for other people.
Yeah.
And I've felt that in the past, that, I don't count as much. And so it's great to hear that, you're using your own strengths from within to actually stand up for that. And as we've alluded to in your bio, you yourself haven't been without challenges.
Yeah.
And so can you let the audience know how you use the challenge that you've been faced with to
Yeah.
actually help put your message across and then to thrive?
It's really strange because I have always faced challenges in my life from a young age. I was, unfortunately, when I was about 2.5, I was ill with meningitis, and that was kind of like the first real challenge I think I faced at such a young age. And I didn't know that I'd had any lasting effects from that. But after I had meningitis, I seemed to have made a full recovery. It wasn't until later on in life that I discovered that some of the challenges that I have now could be related to having meningitis when I was younger. So, I have a diagnosis. I'm neurodivergent. So my first diagnosis was ADHD and then dyslexia. And ADHD, some people don't realize, can be caused by a brain injury. So if you have meningitis, then you can develop ADHD. But then at the same time, it's like there's a lot of neurodivergence in my family. So it's kind of like, is it a mixture in that way? So I went through school not knowing that I was neurodivergent. And it's interesting because I was looking back through my reports from school, because my dad kept all my school reports, and you could see this pattern of behavior where as I got older, I started to lose my confidence, and the demands of the classroom became a lot more, getting to GCSEs and stuff. You could see in my reports, like, she's not making enough effort, she's not showing her potential, all these kind of things, which, did impact on my confidence. So I think going through life not knowing that I was neurodivergent has had an impact on that. But I think that built up a lot of resilience in me as well. And also, when I was younger, myself and my younger sister were privately fostered, and we had to learn to sort ourselves out, And I remember in one of my reports from year 3, it says, Frances has a lot of responsibility for a child her age. Well, yes, because, getting myself ready, walking my sister, myself to school, and I must have been about 7 when that was written. And always just having to be on the lookout, just making sure that you were safe and that you were in an environment that, just looking after yourself. I think that built up a lot of resilience because we didn't have a choice. We just had to kind of get on with it. So I think that has just made me really resilient. And when I talk about resilient, I think it's a really interesting word, because we always talk about children being resilient. Children have to be more resilient. Some children are very resilient because of the things that they've faced in life, that they've hadn't had a choice but to get through them. And we shouldn't have to be resilient because of adversity. We should be resilient because we've got strong foundations. But unfortunately, a lot of children, they have to build that resilience because of those negative experiences. So I'm very careful when I use the word resilience, because I think it's one of those words that gets thrown around and said, well, children should be more resilient. Well, actually, from their starting points, they are very resilient. So, yeah.
It's interesting. I'd like to go, that's very interesting from the point of view of resilience. Somebody actually picked me up on that and said, wouldn't a better word be persistence? Because interestingly enough, it's the resilience of the Teflon coat that's the protective element of something that's crying out for help.
Yes, yes.
Rather than the resilience, knowing that you're strong inside, and the old adage, sticks and stones won't break my bone. You might break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Yeah.
As a kid, words for me hurt. I came from a background which, I was resilient because of all the things that were happening to me, which weren't that great, to be honest. So I built up this outer shell of protection. I put walls up.
Yeah.
So how can you help from a business context,
Mm.
leading this in the protective factor, as we've, the led this show with the protective factor?
Yeah,
How can you help business people understand how they can apply the protective factor in their businesses for people to thrive, as
yeah,
opposed to cop out and not be
yeah,
able to take the
yeah,
challenges that are
yeah.
involved?
And this is the thing, it's about building safe environments where people can be themselves. And the reason why I am very hesitant when I'm saying those words is because these are words that are bandied about all the time. You know, when people say be resilient, you're in a, you know, and they talk about psychological safety. Well, actually, you have to feel that ease in an environment so that you don't have to mask. And the thing is, when you're neurodivergent, you're so used to masking because you're in an environment that doesn't accept you for yourself, that sometimes, you know, that leads to burnout because you're so used to having to put on a performance all the time and it's not sustainable. So, and then people say you're not resilient, you know, and it's about that safety where you really feel that sense of belonging. And again, belonging is a word that's become very popular at the moment, to say, you know, a sense of belonging. Well, actually, how do people, it's not just about belonging, it's about mattering. How do people know that they matter in your workplace? If they come to you with a problem, how do they know that their needs are going to be listened to, that they're going to be given grace about things? You know, what is the response when you can see that they're struggling? And we tend to have this kind of like punitive response rather than a supportive approach, and we're losing so many good people within the workplace because of that. So my, you know, number one thing around my training is to make sure that workplaces understand how to support neurodivergent people in particular. What does that look like in terms of coaching? What does that look like in terms of reasonable adjustments? What does that look like in terms of workplace accommodation, so somebody knows that they can be themselves and be their best? Because when you're masking, you're feeling anxious and you don't perform to your best, and nobody wants that. We've got so many people off work with mental health difficulties. You know, 70% of people, autistic people, don't work. You know, these are the statistics that we're facing because they don't feel psychologically safe in the workplace. So I do everything I can to make sure that workplaces and schools and, you know, all environments are truly safe and people feel like they matter in them.
And how does your personal journey through the neurodivergency that you discovered later in life and your hearing impairment, how has
Yeah,
that reshaped or shaped the view now that you're helping? Because you can do this, as we mentioned, through lived
yeah, yeah,
experience. So
yeah, yeah.
how is that helping people?
It's interesting because I've always, my whole career has been about supporting other people, you know, supporting my own children when they were younger and supporting, you know, other people's children to have, you know, to be successful in education. So when it came down to my own neurodivergence, it really made me take the time to look inward and think about all the accommodations that I put in place without even knowing that I was neurodivergent, you know, and all those things that helped me. I decided to share those with other people. So I started to write articles about, you know, my experiences and what had helped me as a school leader. And I've just recently started a series with neurodivergent school leaders around their own experiences in education, what supported them and how they support their staff. And every single one of them has said because of their own neurodivergence, that's really helped them support their staff, because it's like what they need in place is what they put in place for their staff. And I think that's really lovely, because when you've got, we don't appreciate that dual lens enough. You know, and I like to think about the dual lens as my own personal experience, but my professional expertise as well. And it's so important to have those two together so that we can support people in the best way.
Yes, you know what? At the height of my issues, because I make no bones about it, I was going to take my own life. And I don't do that for, oh, you poor thing. I do that so that I can let people know, even if somebody looks okay on the surface,
Yeah, yeah,
they might be really troubled underneath, because we all put on, as you're saying, these masks, these personas that aren't us, just to go through the day. And at that point, if anybody had asked me, are you okay? I go, yeah, I'm fine.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so I always think, I say this just so that people can say, right, I haven't got all the answers. I was there. There is light at the end of the tunnel. and can be. I went to Al-Anon, which is the support group for people who have alcoholics in their lives. I found that because of my chaotic kind of brain, I was attracting people with different issues, etc. And I'm not judging, it's just what it was.
Yeah.
And they said one of the things is everybody has a common thing. It's like AA when you go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm sure I've not been to one of those meetings, but the people that have got the thing, the issue, the alcoholism, help others because they know what it's like to be an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I was in that group where we all knew what it was like to be having a friend or a family member or a son or a daughter or an aunt or an uncle or a working colleague with alcoholism. So we shared that common experience. How important do you think it is to have different groups of people from this inclusive perspective to actually then have a greater understanding from their perspective of actually this is what I would put in place because I know what I've lacked in the past? How important it is, do you think, in institutions to have different types of people with different things about them?
Oh, I'll give you an example from my life. My last role, there was a neurodiversity support group, and it just made me feel straight away that there were people that were listening and that understood. And some of the challenges that I had in the workplace, I could go to them and say, you know, this is something at the moment. And they say, okay, this is what we've done. This is what people have tried in the past. And it really helped. It stops you feeling alone and feeling like it's just you. And everybody needs community. Everybody wants to feel like they belong to something, and everybody wants to feel listened to. So having a network, and this is the most important thing to me, and that's why I set up the BayMed, I co-set up the BayMed Send Hub, because I found that there were so many educators who were having the same experience that didn't have that support network. And I wish when I first started my career in education, I'd had better support networks to help me through. And I think some of the challenges that I went through, I would have coped with them better if I'd had people that were from outside my organization in particular, so weren't judging in terms of, you know, what was needed for that organization at the same time, to talk to bounce off. So that's what I'd spend a lot of my time doing now, just kind of networking with people, and especially on social media as well. I find that that's a really important space to connect with people that you wouldn't necessarily, you know, have thought to connect with. And just, we all have something in common, you know, and I think that's really important to say. We all have something in common that we can use to better things, you know. So yeah, I think connection and networking is really important.
And moving along from that, for somebody who's got a business or that you are in a business and you think, I'm not listened to, I'm not being taken into account, or how can I, as a business owner, put this in place? Can you think of some of the practical solutions that can help? Because a lot of people, what do I do?
Yeah. And you know, that's a great question, because it is, first of all, doing the inner work, thinking about yourself. And this is something I write about in my book, thinking about yourself, thinking about some of the biases that you might hold against other people. We all have biases, you know, we can't get away from that, you know, and there's people that we tend to attract, like you said, and people that we tend to kind of stay away from a little bit more, like that we're a bit more fearful of. And it's that understanding, or that lack of understanding, that really stops us from connecting with people. So first of all, it's exploring your own privileges, your own biases, and thinking, okay, what are some of these areas that make me feel a bit uncomfortable? You know, if I you know, have a disabled employee, what does that look like for me? Does that make me nervous? You know, what can I do about that? And it's about educating yourself first and foremost, reaching out to people to kind of get a better understanding, which is again why I like social media, because it's not necessarily about going to your employer. I've been asked before, you know, when I've worked somewhere, what can we do to support you? And exactly like you said, well, I don't know. And then it was, well, can you write a list of things that might help? And it's like, you want me to write a list myself of things that I'd like you to do? And it's like sometimes being put on the spot, you don't know what you need
Mm.
in the moment. Might not be able to articulate that. You might be new to your diagnosis, so you're not really sure. So it's really important to look outward to see, to bring people into your organization that can speak to people at different levels of understanding. So doing management training, doing training with your staff around strategies and things that they can use is really important.
You see, again, I speak as I'm an open book, it's
Mm.
something which I made a decision to say I will share the great and the good and the not so good about me, so that, again, people might identify, and if you don't, that's fine. But I'm an introvert by nature.
Mm.
And I find, and I might be actually on the autistic spectrum. I kind of think I might be, but I've never gone to have that kind of test.
Yeah,
But you see, crowds of people, they wear me out. I'm
yeah,
not in parties, and people don't understand. They look at say, "Aren't you enjoying yourself?" And I go, "It's not really my place of enjoyment because I
yeah,
can't zone in to one conversation.
yeah, yeah,
It just overwhelms me."
yeah.
And again, in a busy workplace, I worked in the city of London for quite a
Mm.
while, and that was hustle and bustle, and you get used to it. But the energy that was taken from me,
Yeah,
I mean, it was just like I was super tired at the end. I was frazzled, what have you. And then depression starts to come in because I look at everybody else and think, you're thriving in this environment. Why am I so odd? Why am I doing this? And then I realized I get my energy from within.
yeah,
And I think a lot of extroverts, and again, anybody that's an extrovert, please, I'm not an expert in this, but from my own thing, that they get energy from being with other people.
yeah,
And I'm giving energy to other people, but I don't get it from it,
yeah, yeah,
if that makes sense. You'll know better
yeah,
than I do.
yeah, yeah,
And it's so exhausting. So at
yeah,
work, in a big crowded environment, let's say a meeting room with everybody in there, and the people that are competing for promotion and things like that, they
yeah,
want to get their voices heard.
yeah,
Never felt able to put my hand up, never felt able to share my opinion, never felt able to contribute because there was this big crowd that I just overwhelmed me. Now I had great ideas, I just couldn't verbalize them.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's about noticing, and that's one of the skills of management is noticing who the loud voices are and how people communicate, and that's what I try to do just to make sure people weren't left out, because it's very easy when you've got louder voices that they can take over and dominate a conversation. And that's one of the skills of management, just being able to notice when people need that extra support to bring their ideas forward. And the thing is about neurodivergence is as a manager, what I noticed is I didn't really see that hierarchy. Yes, I knew I was the boss, but in terms of being able to, I think that made me a bit vulnerable sometimes, where I would say, well, somebody else can do that. I'm fine with them taking, that promotion or taking that idea, whatever else. Everybody will know it's come from me, but obviously they didn't.
No.
So sometimes it looks like I hadn't done something and they'd done it for me. And when you haven't got people that are honest, and like you said, they're looking for promotion, they'll take the credit for that. And I think that makes us a bit more vulnerable when we don't speak up, because people will manipulate us, people will take advantage of us, and we are quite vulnerable in that sense, because we're masking and we don't know whether it's us or whether we're saying something's wrong, but we're like, but everybody else is doing it and they seem to be fine with it, so maybe it's just me. And because you've always had that feeling of not fitting in and not being able to navigate society in the same way as neurotypical people, it makes you question, whether you should be doing something in a different way. But that's why it's so important, again, to have those conversations with people. I remember once I saw a post on social media, and it was just really silly, like someone saying that they put some toast on and they were standing in front of the toaster and the toast was burning and they were still standing there, and the fire alarm was going off and they could hear it and they were just standing there because they just zoned out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I do that all the time. But it just makes you feel seen. Because instead of like, beating yourself up about these things, you've had somebody else that's shared the same experience, and this is why it's so important to talk to people, and do it in your own way. If you are quite introverted, social media is a really nice space for you to kind of just lurk, and see stories of other people that you think, oh, that's happened to me. Oh, I'm going to try that next time. Oh, I'm going to send an email with my ideas. I'm going to follow up after the meeting and say, thanks for the meeting. These were some of the ideas that I had, blah, blah. So you've got a record of that as well.
Oh, that's so cool. I wish somebody
Yeah,
had said that to me the years that I was in corporate, because
yeah,
yeah, and just to let you know as well, from that point of view, I'm not very good at crowd-based networking, when you all
yeah,
get into a room and, I just, oh no,
yeah,
I can put an act on, but again, it's not me and it's exhausting and I don't like it. And I feel like, well, I'm the odd one out and everybody else is having a
yeah,
great time and I'm not. And
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just, you go back and you drive away in the car and you just think, oh no, what, oh, really? So
yeah,
I stopped it. I
yeah,
stopped it. And I use online networking now.
yeah.
And that suits me. And it's not that I'm a failure
Mm.
at the face-to-face networking. It's just I'm not designed for that.
Yeah, but
And you know,
yeah, but it's really interesting that you say that, because I think things have changed a lot. So I went to a networking event for neurodiversity in business, neurodiversity in the city or something like that. And when you walked into the room, they gave you different lanyards, or some people do stickers or something else. So you'll have like a red or a green or something like that. And green will mean talk to me. I don't mind having a conversation. Red will mean no, don't speak to me. I don't want to talk to anyone. And sometimes you can get like an orange, which is a bit in between. And it's it's a really nice idea. And I've seen that more and more in conferences and things like that, and making sure people have got a quiet space so that if they need that kind of energy recharge and they can step out and come back in. But when I saw that at a business meeting in the city, I just thought, wow, this is how far we've come, because we're recognizing now that we need different brains. And actually, that logical thinking, that sequential thinking, that kind of thinking outside the box that, different types of neurodiversity bring is what we need. So I was really pleased to see that. And I'd say, to anyone listening, that is such a good way to make people feel comfortable, so that they know I can be here, I can be present, but there's no pressure on me to interact.
I love that. Yeah, yeah, I love that because as a child it was always like, so what do you think then, Deborah? What do you think? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know what I think. Oh, don't put me on the spot.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes you freeze. And that's an anxiety response, where, we either flight, we freeze, we fawn, and it's just thinking, okay, what does that look like for me?
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I'm so pleased. I might be venturing forth again and asking for an
Yeah.
orange badge.
It's a good idea.
I love it. No, that's great. No, that's fantastic. And then thinking about intersectionality,
Yeah, yeah,
can you explain for the layman what that
yeah,
is and
yeah.
how we can promote that?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, again, the lot of buzzwords. So intersectionality is a word that's used a lot to think about intersecting identities. But intersectionality and intersecting identities are two separate phrases. So intersectionality came from a scholar in America, an advocate called Kimberly Crenshaw, and she was looking at the marginalization of Black queer women in particular. And she was talking about, the fact that there are some people that are forgotten in conversations. And that's what she was saying, that to kind of use the word intersectionality was to put a microscope on on Black women in particular, so they wouldn't get forgotten. But it's one of these words that became a bit politicized. And so it was kind of used to talk about all identities. And I like to really make sure that I differentiate that so the original meaning isn't lost, and talk about intersecting identities as well. So intersecting identities are basically everything that makes us who we are. Our gender, our class, our age, our sexuality, our ethnic origins, our backgrounds, all those kind of things that make us who we are. That's all part of our identity. And it's so important to kind of analyze that, because our identity is how we see the world, how we show up in the world, and it's really important to think, like, how do I show up in the world? What is the lens that I see from? And does that lens make me slightly biased, when I'm thinking about things? So, yeah, it's something I'm really passionate about, thinking about that identity. And especially when we're talking about neurodivergence and, racially minoritized and marginalized groups, what does that look like for them to show up in the world?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because if you only know what you know,
Exactly.
That's why I think when young kids go off between, uni and school and uni, and they travel, and they say travel is a great mind opener, broadener, because you see people in different cultures doing different things, living in certain ways, etc. And it gets you out of your little kind of bubble.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think it's and again, with the internet, I'm sure that we are much more able to see things, as long as it's not manipulated in a way for an agenda. But just thinking about how other people live, think, work, etc., making our own minds up about what we want. But I do know that my views as a teenager are not the views I hold now. And it's important to know for everybody that you're always a work in progress, aren't you?
Exactly, and I was speaking to someone yesterday, and they were giving me a really great example of that, where they had kind of gone out. They live in Birmingham, and they'd gone out, and there was like a protest there, and they said they felt so scared to be there, but then they just said to themselves, you know what, I'm here and I'm allowed to be here. And then they were saying that their presence and just being with people that had completely different views from them actually started a conversation. And this is the thing, we are so scared to have conversations with people that are different, to us. And actually that breaks down so many barriers. I had the same recently. I went up to Blackburn. Blackburn is not an area that I'm familiar with at all, and I felt a bit anxious about that. I didn't know what that was going to be like, and people were so friendly. I had to get out of my comfort zone and say, you know what, even though I'm feeling a bit of anxiety, I need to do this. And everybody was so friendly, to the point where the cab driver, he could see I was a bit nervous about the area because it was late at night as well. And he actually, when we got to my hotel, he said, there's no fare, there's no charge. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, I just want to show you you're welcome here. And that really touched me. There's those small acts of kindness. And I talk about that in my book as well. Kindness is such an important consideration. Those small acts of kindness to show people that they belong, that they matter to you, and that you're not going to ignore some of the difficulties or what you've noticed. So, yeah, that was really touching.
I love that. I'm not too far from there, actually.
Oh, wow.
I
Okay.
live up in the northwest, so I do know how wonderfully friendly people are. I call myself an honorary northerner. I'm not a northerner, but I just everybody's very, very open and friendly. They call a spade, and
exactly. You just know where you are with them.
Exactly. I love it. And I've been in London, and don't get me wrong, I've had a nice time in London, different time, but but that was then, and this is now. The interesting thing what you talk about, and I'm going to say something here because it's a little bit off topic, but it's a little bit relevant as well. I've got this little dog, right? And I walk her every day, and I go different places every day to give her a bit of a variety, etc. And one of them is in the local park, and she's always on the lead. But she always wants, I think she picks up on people's energy. Some people, she's like, yeah, let me at them, So she was absolutely going with a lovely group of teenagers. And if I describe these youngsters, one lady had like really lovely red hair. Some people had some piercings. There was some really great gothic-y makeup going on. There was sort of like a genre, if you say. Now, if I hadn't had my little dog, don't get me wrong, I don't have anything against those types of people, but I wouldn't necessarily have gone up to them to strike a conversation up with them. And so off goes my little dog. Oh yeah, no. They probably had a sandwich in their pocket. That's probably what she was after. And they loved her.
Oh,
We've had a really good chat with them. What lovely people.
yeah.
Absolutely lovely. Whoever their parents were needs a big
Oh,
thumbs up because they were all brilliant. And we had a laugh, we had fun, and it was just great. And I just thought to myself, it wasn't for my little dog,
yeah.
I wouldn't have made the effort to go
Yeah.
up and have a chat with them. And it just warmed my soul
Yeah.
to think,
Lovely.
these people are expressing themselves in a way which is important to them, because I think it's a kind of a
Yeah.
thing with that kind of group of people.
Yeah.
And they wanted to wear the clothes, they wanted to have the makeup, they wanted to talk in the way that that group talks to itself.
Yeah.
They were just brilliant.
Yeah.
This crazy lady with her little sausage dog coming up, and I had the best time.
Oh.
And they said, "Oh, bring the dog again. We'd like to have a chat." Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's so
And,
lovely.
I might never meet them again, but I felt like I've met friends, which is
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah, that's
Really
so
nice.
lovely. That's really lovely. And it's just such a good example of what I was saying, that that's what happens when we kind of communicate, when we get to know each other. And what's it really interesting about that? So obviously working in schools, being a head teacher, we have all kinds of, different children, you have different tastes, music, clothes, and all that kind of thing. And then one thing that they had in common was they all had autism. And autism, it makes you think kind of like in a visual way. You've got lots of sensory and things going on all the time. And I always used to have like a visual profile. And I used to have a visual profile. And I only just did it on PowerPoint. And it was all the things about me. Because as a head teacher, I knew that people would be nervous about speaking to me just because I was the head teacher. And so I had this visual profile. I used to have it on my door, and it had things like my favorite football team, what I like doing, different types of food, like all that kinds of, just on a visual profile. And I'm telling you, it was so powerful just to have a way to connect. And people would spot things and say, "Oh, you like football? Oh, I like football. Oh, you like swimming? I like swimming." And it was just such a lovely example of how we connect, regardless of our backgrounds, regardless of our tastes or our identities. We've always got a way to connect through things, and I just thought it's such a powerful thing to do. How do we get to know each other? That visual profile, it really starts conversations. If somebody likes, I don't know, motor car racing, "Oh, were you up at, wherever at the weekend?" It's all those small things that are really helpful. So I always encourage people to kind of do a visual profile and just start that conversation, that connection, that human
I
connection.
love that. Yeah, I not thought
Mm.
of that before, but I think that's really great, and it
Yeah,
opens up areas of conversation and brings an openness to the whole thing.
yeah, yeah.
And isn't that the case?
Mm.
The boss is considered the boss, but actually the boss is a normal human being, like as much
Exactly.
as we're all normal, but
Yeah,
he's a human being
yeah,
like everybody else, and their
exactly,
own issues, etc.
exactly.
So yeah, absolutely. And thinking about the commercial side of this now, because a lot of people were saying, "Oh gosh, is this going to cost me a lot of money? Is this,
Yeah.
how do we make a profit if we're putting all these things, and what we're going to get out of it? Because we run
Mm.
a business." So what would you say to people if they're thinking, "Oh, this is going to take too much and I
Yeah,
don't see anything
it's
back"?
really interesting because this is the thing that people worry about all the time, but you're actually losing money because you've got people who are, leaving your workplace, not staying for a long time. So then you've got to go through recruitment and everything again. You've got people that are off sick, they're burnt out, they're taking more sick days than other people because they haven't got accommodations in place. So we're actually losing billions of pounds because people are not able to show up fully in the workplace. So it's an investment in your business to say, okay, I'm going to put support in place. Like, for example, I normally use multiple screens. Getting me a tablet for £300 as well as a laptop changed my productivity. It's £300 well spent, and you can write that off for your business expenses as well. So it's like thinking about those small things that really make a difference. That I think one thing that I've learned over the years is people will say, well, if I put that in place for that person, I've got to put it in place for everyone. Yeah, do put it in place for everyone. Because what people are recognizing now is that there are a lot more neurodivergent people than we think. So putting certain accommodations in, like, having meetings by virtually instead of in person, sometimes, not demanding that everybody is in the workplace from 9 to 5 every day. That flexibility. I work better at night. I'm not going to be sending you an email at 2 o'clock in the morning, but I like the quiet, like, I think it was Dickens that said, he used to write at night. He used to go for a walk around London and get inspiration because it was nice and quiet, and he used to write about that. But that's not a normal time to work. So think about the things that you're imposing on your workplace and actually how flexibility and things like that can actually help people. And that will save you a lot of money in the long run.
And also, I think, and just following on from that point, it will attract the right kind of people to your business.
Absolutely.
Because you know
Absolutely.
what, everybody's saying, oh, getting good talent these days is tough. And
Yeah.
yes, it is. And youngsters and people coming into work and needing jobs, they say it's tough to get a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you have the right mechanisms in place to attract the right kind of people and who
Yeah.
want to stay,
Yeah.
really add value over the years, not months, then
Yeah.
that's got to
Yeah.
be a good thing, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And that's the number one thing. The job market at the moment is so hard. And people aren't working in the same way that they used to. They're not prepared to burn themselves out
No,
in the
yeah,
way that we were taught. Just go to work, it's really important, blah, blah. Their mental health is really important. And so it should be. So people are looking for organizations that will look after them, and like you said, it's so hard to find talent. I used to run a course for SENCOs called Building Confidence in SENCOs. So for people who don't work in education, special needs coordinators, like every school has one. And some of them, they were so burnt out, so much paperwork. And one of the first things that I used to say is, if you don't like your job, leave. And they were like, oh, and I said, well, why are you working in an organization that doesn't value you? And I said, you have to turn that script around and say to yourself that they need you more than you need them.
yeah,
And just by changing your mindset about that, you realize, actually, I'm going to go and ask for things. Somebody yesterday said, what would you do? What would you say if you weren't afraid? You'd ask for accommodations, you'd ask for support. And it was really funny because we were in a room full of people where somebody would say, well, I'd really like some admin support. And someone else would say, well, in my school, I've got admin support. And they'd say, have you? Oh, I'm actually going to go back. And they'd find out it's the same type of school, same size, same level of need. And they'd look at each other. It's like they'd found out. And this is why I loved doing some of the sessions in person. I think all of them were in person, actually, because it gave them a way to get out of their school and have a break, but actually talk to each other. And so many things came out from that connection. And that networking was so important. So yeah, I definitely say that to people, that just think about your environment, whether it's the organization that you're in that's making you a bit unwell, that you're not really realizing. Because just going back to my experience, when I started losing my hearing, I was getting loads of sinus infections. And I remember, I was in Costco once doing my shop, and all the music was off. Like, it was just, and I was thinking, is it, because it was back in the days where, you used to get that really cheap supermarket music. And I was like, is it the music? But then it was like people like George Michael. And I tested it on my phone and with my headphones, and it was like really off, Mariah Carey, things like that, which just sounded really out of tune. And I kept going to the doctors. They said, oh, you've got a sinus infection. But I'd actually lost my hearing, and that really taught me a lesson, because I was in a really stressful situation, and I hadn't listened to my body when my body was telling me I need to rest. So my body was like, and that's how I am. I'll just keep on going, keep on going. But my body was saying to me, I'm not having it anymore. I've told you to rest. You're not listening. So I'm going to just shut down and then you have to rest. And it taught me such a valuable lesson about stress and looking after yourself, because your body keeps a score. It really does. And it
it
will
does.
tell you that it's had enough.
Yes, and I listen, and I don't feel guilty anymore.
Yes,
You're out there
absolutely. Yeah,
taking a break.
Yeah.
Feel guilty by not
Yeah.
doing something, because I
Yeah.
had this weird thing. I kept on doing
Yeah.
every minute of every day. I had to be filled with doing stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got addicted to doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a chronic people pleaser. That was my
Mm.
addiction of choice. That was my thing. I had to get my fix, and I meddled and I messed up with people, and I thought I
Yeah.
was doing a good thing, and I should have just got the
Yeah.
whole thing away. And once I was able to come out of that, that was
Yeah.
a big turning point for me. And
Yeah.
actually thinking, you know what, instead of trying to fix everybody else, why don't you just fix yourself?
Oh gosh, it's so true. And just taking that time to do that. And that's what I did. I took some time out to kind of have some coaching, have some therapy, recalibrate myself, and step back in. And I really need that. And now I do that. I'll take a sabbatical for a couple of months, which I'm doing now. Just like, I handed in my notice 6 months ago and said, I'm just going to take a sabbatical. I'm going to work on my consultancy. And they were like, okay, you're going to change your mind? I was like, no, I just need to have a break. And I wanted to finish my book and things like that. But it's so important because we over deliver. If somebody tells me, especially me being neurodivergent, if someone says to me, oh, can you make me some notes about something? Can you look into something? I'll give them a 20-page report.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't ask for that. But in my brain, it's like, whoa, that might lead to this, and that might lead to this, and this might lead to that. So I need to do all this. And you give it to them, they're like a bit overwhelmed in it. But if you understand how our brains work, you know that you have to be precise and say, can you just give me like a paragraph summarizing what happened with this incident? I need it for this report by this day. That to me, okay, I'm clear at what's being
Yeah,
asked for.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's no place for me to get confused about what I'm doing. So that's it. And following that up by email, being really clear, I want this by this date, because that's what I'll use to go back and check myself. So, I'll take notes like on my note taker, if I'm on a meeting, and then afterwards it will summarize it for me to say, this is what's said, blah, blah. And I can go back to that. There's no confusion about what I need to do, because it's so hard when you're talking to people in person and you don't have those notes back up, because we all interpret things in different ways. And I think that's a really important consideration. It's the number one tip. I know I've given quite a few, but it's
No, I
such an
love that.
important tip for people. Write it down, follow up by email to say, can I have this like this by that date? It's not extra work. It makes your life easier because you're not chasing people for things.
I love that. And you know what? I know I work well under that. And that's
Yeah.
why I say I think I might be on a spectrum. We're all probably on a spectrum of some sorts. But ultimately, I think to myself, yes, I need precise and detailed instruction as to know that. Otherwise, I'm like, oh, I have a bit
Yeah.
of panic,
Yeah.
and then I go over deliver when actually somebody says, yeah, but I only wanted a couple of pages. And you think, oh,
Exactly. And like you said, people do say that a lot in terms of everybody kind of being on a spectrum. We're all different in ways, and it's kind of like that level of difference is really important to think of. What is the level that gets you a diagnosis? Somebody wrote a post the other day, and it was quite troubling, where she said, we all experience this, we all experience that. And people were saying, well, that doesn't make you autistic, that doesn't make you have ADHD. There's a whole different things that go into that. But I think it's important to say we're not all as neurotypical as we think. And actually, when we hear all this narrative around an explosion in ADHD, actually, I was listening to a podcast by Ken Robinson the other day, and he was talking about the fact that we've got more and more demands on us as people. So we are seeing more diagnosis of things like ADHD because it's harder to concentrate.
well,
You know?
I take the example of the coffee shop, right? When
Yeah,
I was a kid, when my mum used to go out on a shopping on a Saturday, we go in the local cafe, and you either had tea or coffee.
yeah,
That was it, tea or coffee.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
then you'd there's the thing, would you like milk with?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And then you go to your table, and there'd probably be little sugar cubes or whatever if you wanted
yeah,
a
yeah,
bit of
yeah,
that.
yeah,
None of this, would you like it latte, mocha,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
thingy, doodah,
Alternative milks,
decaf,
yeah.
what have you. It was just tea or coffee.
Yeah, yeah.
The decisions were, they were hardly there to make, so you
Yeah,
didn't have to sit there thinking, oh, it's this, this.
yeah,
It just,
yeah.
that's what you get.
Yeah, it's so
And,
true. It's so
that's just with a
important.
coffee. And
Yeah,
it's just like, oh my gosh. And because there wasn't all this choice,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you either had white bread or brown bread. There was
yeah,
granary or seeded or
yeah,
gluten-free or anything. I'm not saying it was better than worse,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you didn't have to make that many decisions.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Call it decision fatigue, don't we? Where, you've had to make so many decisions that you're doing that
It
all
wears you
day.
out,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
really wears you out because there's so
yeah,
much variety now. And that's great, that's fabulous, but it just makes choice even more
yeah.
difficult.
What's really interesting about what you said? So, what I found now, especially with younger people, when it comes to phones, some people just get themselves a basic brick phone.
Yeah,
Because it's just like it's too much stimulation all the time to have the internet, to have all these games, to have people being able to contact you this way. So there's been a real trend in people just getting old basic phones, just
yeah.
brick phones. They can't do anything on apart from call or text, and that's it. And I really think it's a great idea.
Well, I was back in the day, and yes, before computers,
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah,
I was there.
yeah.
You had no email, you had no text, you had none of this, no mobile phones.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
you had was a telephone
yeah,
face to face, and
yeah.
that was it. When faxes came in, oh my gosh, this
And pages, wow.
wow. So really, you only had two ways of communicating: by letter,
Yeah,
telephone, or face to face. That
yeah,
was it. And now I have
yeah,
5 different platforms, from WhatsApp to texting to
yeah, yeah,
Facebook to LinkedIn to
yeah,
all of these myriad of things. I've got to keep on checking it all the time.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that's some reason why we end up feeling like we're on a hamster wheel, because it's just like
Absolutely.
it's just speeding up and we just got to seem to be running faster to
Yeah,
still.
yeah, absolutely. And I talk about FOMO a lot, so the fear of missing out. And it is that constant trying to keep up with all these sources of information. So getting alerts. I don't have any alerts on my phone for anything because it's just so distracting for me. And it's constantly, I'm going to miss that information. I'm going to miss that information if I don't, if I'm not keeping up. And that's the fear of missing out, having to check LinkedIn, having to check Twitter, Instagram, all of those kind of things. Actually, I don't have any notifications. I don't have to check anything, and actually, I'm all right. So,
You survived. You managed to get on today.
yeah,
That's good.
exactly.
That's good. Now you've got your lovely new book coming out.
Yeah, yeah,
So please do tell us about
yeah.
that and how that can benefit people.
Oh gosh, this book has been absolutely amazing, but at the same time, it's been a labor of love. So, as I said, I talk a lot about the experience of children from racially minoritized groups in education and what that looks like when they've also got a SEND need. Like they're neurodivergent, they've got disability. And those sorts of things, and that kind of marginalization, that levels of exclusion that we see. And so I found that there wasn't much work around that. There wasn't somewhere that was putting that all together and really analyzing what that looks like. And I thought, well, I know so many people that are experts on this. So I just basically put a call out for people and said, I'm writing this book on intersectionality, race and send. And I said, I want to call it Conversations for Advocacy and Change. And because I'm a great believer in advocacy on that shared collective knowledge, and expertise. And I put a call out. I had about 55 responses, which I couldn't believe. It's a 12 chapter book. So people, their commitments and things like that and the time that I need to do it. So I ended up with about 35 people, I think, in the end. And I just sat and had all these conversations with people. Some of the topics I had like 2 or 3 meetings with different people because they were just so passionate about talking about it. So I compiled it into a book. So it's a book talking about different topics around that in education, where I'm just sitting down with people, talking about their experience and their perspectives, and then I've put that together with actions, because it's like there's no point in sitting and having a conversation if you're not going to do anything after, if you're not going to learn from that. So it's a conversation, it's an introduction to the topic, then a conversation, and then key points and next steps. So it's all like, yeah, I hope it's going to be helpful. The feedback so far has been really, really positive, which has been really nice, just to say how helpful it's been. And it's not just me talking, saying this is what I think, it's other people from their experiences. So, you know, I got to the end of it, I handed it in on Monday, and it was 87,500 words. And I was like, who does that for fun? Like, who just wakes up one morning and just, oh, I'm going to just write this novel of a book, and I'm not even getting a PhD out of it or whatever, but just because I think it's going to be helpful. But you know what? I'm so proud of it, and I'm so proud of the feedback where people are saying how helpful it has been. So yeah, it's out
Oh, I
next year.
love that. Frances Akinde is that kind of person to get it out there for the benefit of others,
Yeah.
share that knowledge and help people explore these areas. I think
Yeah.
that's just wonderful. Labor of
Thank
love.
you. Thank you.
Well done, you. Well
Thank
done,
you.
you. Because anybody out there who's written a book or numbers of books, they'll know how tough it is to get.
Yeah, of course.
Oh,
Towards the end of it, you feel like you're going insane. You know, you just live and breathe it all the time. I had to I ended up last night, it's so silly, but I was retiling my kitchen because I just needed something completely different
completely
to
different.
do, just
Oh.
to just to clear my mind.
Well, I love that. So get Frances round to clean your kitchen because she's looking for something to do to clear her
Exactly.
mind. Well, the next time you're up in Blackburn, I'll give you a shout.
Well, yeah, I'll get that done. Why not? The thing is about ADHD, you're like, don't need a professional. I'll get that done. I'll just watch a video. Oh, yeah.
Just don't go building a house anytime.
Exactly. That's a nice idea.
Okay, I started something now. Bless you. Oh, Frances, I tell you what, it's been an absolute delight to have you.
It's been lovely.
It's been really good. Just before we go, can you
Yeah.
let people know how they can get hold of you?
Well, I love LinkedIn. I've got my own website as well. It's called inclusionht.com. HT stands for head teacher. Those are my initials. So it's called inclusionht.com. And then I'm really active on LinkedIn. So those are the best two ways to get hold of me.
Lovely. It's Frances with an E.
Yeah. Yep. E for girls, I for boys.
Yeah, Frances Akinde.
Yeah.
Akinde.
Yes.
So do go ahead and connect with Frances on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure, as I said.
No, thank you for inviting me. It's been really nice.
Oh, yeah. I think people will get a lot out of this, and you know, it's just lovely. And again, to the viewers and listeners of the show, thanks ever so much as well, because it's wonderful to have you with us. I truly appreciate you. If you'd like to subscribe so that you can get information like this at your fingertips, that would be great. And do like and comment and share, because this is something which I'm sure a lot of people can really benefit from as well. So until next time, everybody, we'll see you all again very soon, and be successful. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Thank you.